Good afternoon and welcome into the PPC here in Europe. Finch and Fawn going to be the ones here taking you through some of these exciting matchups that we have lined up for you today. And Fawn, what I've learned from this first week and a half, so to speak, of
Mhm.
PPC action is that anybody can win in any given moment. What we used to know can be thrown out of the window.
Absolutely. And some of these guys are newer to the scene, if
Mm.
anything. We have the team on mixalazeub as well. I mean, Nauk is one of those star players that was absolutely crushing in relegations on Leon. So hopefully we'll see him return to form, at least back to a former character that he might be a little bit more comfortable on. At the same time, they might ban him, who knows. But Mixalazeub last week ended up fighting against Interstellar, making that an entire 3-2. So I mean, maybe they'll bring their A game today, but Celestial's not a team it was I would sleep on either. I mean, Tutu, Slop, Xenost, Oteb, and Klosar. A lot of these guys are very, very similar to what we saw last year for the Paladins minor league. So hopefully we'll be able to see some good games today for sure.
I would be surprised if this wasn't an extremely competitive day all the way
Right.
down throughout these sets, just based on the matchups that we're seeing. And I think you're right to sort of highlight that this Celestial roster has some, I mean, maybe the right word is veteran players, but some players who've certainly seen this all before, not going to be intimidated, I don't think, by this mixed squad and the fact that maybe they're coming in with maybe a look they haven't quite seen just yet. So we are just about ready to start heading into those picks and bans here, Fawn. And is there anything coming up in these that maybe you would be that you're expecting to see here or anything you'd be surprised to see go by? I mean, we've seen a lot of different things valued in this pick ban phase so far. So what are you keeping your eye on?
Well, if it's anything like how these past couple weeks have been going, I would expect right. The Vivian is one of the things that was I was about to say. She's just been tearing it up. She's been too consistent. Her damage numbers have been way too high with the amount of pressure that she can apply on any target. She's just sitting back there chilling. Terminus has been another one of those bands that I've been seeing every now and again. Same thing for Zen. And of course, we can't forget the two pocket picks. We can't forget the Genos and the Corvus. Both of these
Yeah.
healers in their own right have been sustaining so much of their targets, especially the Corvus, and we've seen games won entirely off of his back. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that. And the ROM is actually going to come through as well. Once again, another band that has been pretty prominent this past week or two.
Yeah, that does mean, it's a little bit odd. Sometimes I feel like you see these bands come out in pairs. The Genos is banned, like if the Vivian is banned, maybe you want to also make sure the Victor is banned, so the other team doesn't get one without you getting the other. And I kind of feel the same way about the Genos Corvus sort of mix here as well. But we're seeing it again where only one of those are taken away. So I mean, if I'm mix, you've got some pretty good options to pick from. But instead, I like to take the Anara here first overall. I mean, we have seen this point tank get a lot of value. Do you like the Anara taken here first before everything
Uh,
else?
yeah, I do actually. I really enjoy the Anar pick because of the fact that she has that survivability that we all know Anar so well from. I mean, having that Mother's Grace, meaning that you can avoid any of that CC, means that she's a very, very prominent pick, especially for now, since Barrick has sort of fallen from grace, right? And having
Yeah.
that Ash and Atlas to also be responded with means that they want to try and have some of this aggression as well. More
Yes.
frontliners that we've been seeing being brought out, even though you have the changes to resilience, Ash being picked more so for the sustainability and the survivability that she has based off of her assert dominance alone, along with the along with the Atlas, excuse me, with the exile.
Well, hey, if you're going for survivability for Ash, need I remind you that Corvus is out there? Looks like I don't need to remind Mix of that fact there, Fawn, because it's been selected to go alongside this Anara and this Victor. And I mean, talk to me a little bit about how Corvus mixes with the Anara, because how your support is able to keep your tank up feels so critical to me. And Corvus, I feel like just has a great sort of matchup with everyone that he could be trying to back up.
Well, you have the standard Corvus talent that typically gets picked, which is making sure that you have those two marks on two different people and you sustain them as best as you can with your right click if you're using the default keys or if you're using the weird ones like Kresnik does with his keys all over the place. You'll have Corvus pretty much with his right mouse button making sure he can sustain whoever it is that he is going to look at. And that's perfect what Anar wants. A lot of the time you have the Maldamba with the Anar to make sure that she can sustain and live because of how strong that pocket and AoE heal can be on the side of Madama. He can heal different targets, but he can just toss a gourd on point with Anara and make sure she lives up. Corvus has that same sort of potential with his marks being spread out. He doesn't really have to make sure that he looks at different targets all the time. He's relying on those marks to make sure he can heal people up. So with Anara, you can pretty much do the same thing with Corvus.
Well, now that Damba has a difficult task ahead in trying to match the value of this Corvus, I just don't think that's going to be the easiest thing in the world for them here. As we also saw that Zen come through at the tail end, and is that going to be enough for them to try and shoot through the Atlas and the Ash? I mean, the Ash, I imagine, the one with most of the point duties, and we'll see the Atlas being a little bit more aggressive. But how do you see this Zen working here in this draft?
Well, based off of the composition that mixalazeub have drafted for themselves, they have that point presence in the form of Inara, but they picked, but they, I'd like, I mean, they picked Ruckus. I mean, clearly they want to be able to try and dive as hard as possible onto the backline so they can take some of that pressure off of the victor. As for Celestial, they're all about fighting. They're not going to really care too much about the point for what it is that, for what it is I'm seeing. They're not going to really care too much about the point. They want to fight. They'll fight first, ask questions later. By fight first, really, I should say, cap the point later. So that's what it seems like their composition will be on the tail end of things. And as for talents, nothing really too different for the most part.
Things are looking normal. We're on right Marsh here for this first one. 4 cots picked up on both sides. Also the 4 resiliences, as you highlighted, feels like kind of a must-buy into this type of composition, certainly with that Ash over there. So it makes sense. We're seeing those picked up, and the Ruckus making that much more sense here for Devozy. That mobility, so valuable here on this map. As we start to move into our very first point fight, already Xenost finding the first blood as Zen has been taken out. And that means that Celestial, as you said, certainly are looking to fight first, cap later, even though 21% there for Mix. It's Celestial feeling comfortable, as now they should be able to take care of this Inara as well. Princess Peach Falls and Mix have a pretty comfortable grab over this mid fight.
And immediately, as soon as they get that pick, now they're sitting on point. Now they're capping for their team. Now they are focusing on the objective, as they've already won the fights on the side. Zen got caught out a little bit too early because he was trying to force his way through apartments to see if he could find a potential pick, see if anybody wasn't expecting him, but they ended up rushing that in its entirety, which is why Xenos, the healer, was able to get that last hit.
Tutu got one more kill before he had his life traded out. The Corvus doing his best to keep everyone topped off, but 87% in the back pocket for Celestial, as Mix has reclaimed the point, but with Uber being put down, perhaps this could be the moment for Celestial to try and push back in. Princess Peach has had to step back as well, and so exactly in that space, Celestial will step forward, but now was waiting for it, takes care of Otep, the Cassie, but Closar comes back in, gets rid of the Inara, and that means Celestial should be able to hold on to the midpoint a little bit longer. They've forced in the Ruckus. Everyone throwing their body on the point. At this point, it might be working. Tutu starting to get a little bit lower, as is Closar on this Ash, dashing back out. So Mix have bought themselves a little bit of time.
Very, very good assert dominance as well. They want to try and hold this ground as best as they can, make sure that anybody else that's in the back line can't make it on the site, but they sort of already did that. I mean, that's exactly what you would expect the Ash to do. She's going to try and push right on through the point, use the assert dominance to lock down any priority target, especially guys like now use this barrage through the divider, which is what's causing these guys to move up so far, and that's going to play a pivotal role if Closar can get it off without being taken down like he was.
It was Mix who ended up coming away with that very first point cap, and it looks like they've got a pretty decent offense on the back end of it as well. Payload already starting to rumble as they found some wipes. Maybe even potential secondary kill here, but moving back in towards safety. Princess Peach trying to be that front line, but they find the CC. Now gets yet another kill as Closar struggling a little bit on this Ash to start. Now makes it a double as he takes down Slop as well, shoots him out of the sky with this victor, and things starting to seem even worse now for Celestial. The barrage coming through, and Toot falls as well. They're going to keep this momentum going, Fawn, and push this payload as far as it'll go.
Yeah, they didn't give them really a chance to breathe at all on the side of Celestial Esports. I mean, mixalazeub has that composition that may not be entirely focused on fighting due to the Inara. I mean, you have that point presence. She's pretty much going to be there on point the entire time, capping for your team. But everyone else are doing what you would expect them to do. They're pushing past that divider. The minute that Atlas ended up coming back up to try to push into that little side area right there with the cover and make it a choke point of anything. And they just ran at him. Like, he couldn't really do much of anything. As soon as he put out the divider, they decided to push him because nobody else was there to try and help sustain.
Ends up being another 1-for-1 trade. The Hexifier coming out. If you could tell from minute one that Mix were into trying to get this conversion, even if it meant they had to use some ultimates, Devozy able to make it towards the back, but Slot puts him down rather quickly. Otev ends up falling in trade, though, as the Inara tries to keep this moving, but Closar has planted himself on the payload. That should stop it moving, but still, more kills are coming through in favor of Mix, but as long as Closar is standing, that should deny this conversion. 45 more seconds as Mix back up to try and regroup on.
Now he's at least able to plug some damage into a few other targets, which means that his ultimate's going to be up soon enough. And they may even try to push off of that. I mean, you have the spike coming up as well on Zen, as well as the seismic crash. So all of those can play a role into how they might try and roll this cart in. But at the same time, that's what it seems like they're about to do. They use the barrage to start things off.
How is Tutu still alive down there? Finally ends up getting cleaned up. Slop falls as well, and this could be the opening that Mix need. Closar has been locked down as well. Princess Peach is somehow getting the double kill on this Anara. The Ruckus has everyone zoned out, and that will indeed be the conversion for Mix. And Fawn, right now the strategy for this team seems to clearly be aggression, pressure. They are keeping up the pace here, and Celestial are struggling to answer.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what Corvus brings to the table. And the reason why I'm specifically highlighting Corvus is because of the fact that he is on a 16 streak right
Not
now.
bad.
He's been healing everyone. You know, just a normal day in the office if you're playing Corvus, right? I mean, he's able to heal so many different targets. Like I said, he's going to put marks on different people, make sure that he isn't just hyper-focusing on one person, because that's not really what his job is to do. He wants to be able to make sure that he can keep as many people up as possible. He can provide pocket potential, sure, but with those extra marks, he's going to be able to make sure a lot of his team is sustained. He doesn't really have to be concerned with a lot, and that's pretty much what's keeping his team in the fight a lot of the time. They're playing a lot around him, as you should.
We'll keep an eye on Ruckus and Zen on their dives, able to get upgraded to the Brazilians too, should even be able to more effectively dive. Meanwhile, the Victor able to upgrade fully that Cauterize, so even less healing for Celestial. Now does get that very first kill. It's Closar that falls early. The Accursed Arm does help set up for one trade, but it's still a 2-for-1 in favor of Mix, and the percentage continues to reflect that 48% and climbing still for Mix, as Slop has found a nice perch here up top and is putting out some decent damage. But I mean, the Anara isn't even on the actual point here at this point. That's how comfortable Mix feel with pushing forward. But Closar and Toot are back now. They should be able to move back in and start contesting. Mix have their work cut out for them yet again.
And I think that's what's so pivotal. The fact that Anara was able to move up, once again, a testament to Corvus, how strong he is. Anara was pushing up, and the entire time, even if she was lowered thanks to Slop's damage, he was just healing them all up the entire time. However, his opening picks might be pretty huge, especially if Zen is going to be able to only find one.
Yeah, this is huge. Also getting the Anara on the back end is huge. That makes it a 3-for-1 in favor of Celestial, and they can now hold this midpoint a little nicer. Remember, they're down 2-0, so should be able to cap pretty quickly as well, as now still looking for some shots. But until Princess Peach comes back in, I think forcing their way in is a bit of a pipe dream. They'll be waiting slowly a little bit of time they have. Slop takes care of Devozy. That's the other tanky presence on the side of Mix that has now been removed. Princess Peach, though, has made their way inside, and Celestial were able to grab it away. I don't know what ended up happening. Rather, Mix were. Obviously, they were the ones at 99%, but I don't understand how Celestial weren't able to keep contesting.
Yeah, I'm not too sure either. I mean, maybe they got forced out a little bit by the Ruckus. I mean, they've been putting on a lot of pressure. I think it's the barrage once again. That divider went up, but as soon as he saw that go up, Victor was already ready. Now, make sure that he used that barrage to not only zone out the remaining members that could have stayed on point, which means that they would have had to move off, obviously. That barrage damage is a little bit too much for anyone to handle, and that may have netted them more percentage of the point, which eventually led to a capture, and we already see the kills coming up on the side of mixalazeub.
This is exactly how it went last time, Fawn, except it's perhaps even worse. A full team wipe coming out for Mix. That'll allow them to keep right on rolling, just like we saw before. And remember, we know this team is willing to commit ultimates to find this conversion, even early on in the push. The important thing is keeping the enemy tanks on respawn here, Fawn. That's what Mix is looking for.
Yeah, it seems like they're already going to get one of them low, but I can't believe that they actually managed to get Uber's Pady. He had gotten the Ash so low, and it made it so hard for her to try to push in. She even used the shoulder bash on her DR to make sure she could escape, but it ended up working out for him. He overextended a little bit too far. Atlas was already looking at him, as well as Otev and the Androxus. They wanted to make sure that no one else could push up so that they could now put the shoe on the other foot, and here they are. Now they're the ones trying to force mixalazeub back and away from the card.
They have been able to step forward and grab a little bit of space, but as soon as they get that Victor back with them, Princess Peach steps forward, but maybe a bit too far forward, gets no healing, and dies on that right side, pushing forward. That's going to make it a lot harder for Mix to find the conversion before that respawn comes through. Tutu does fall to Nauk, whose damage is certainly strong at this point, but with Devozy falling and Nauk falling as well, yet another successful defense from Celestial, and Otep feeling himself a bit, starting to get aggressive, rolling forward. Thanks a little bit better, but drops back, but Celestial looking much better on the defense this time.
Yeah, Otev was already super low when that cart was about to roll around the corner, or at least trying to crest up on that hill. and it forced Maldamba to sort of look at him and mean that they didn't have really a damage dealer. They had the Androxus there, but everyone was pretty much eating a lot of fire from mixalazeub. It was at the moment that Ruckus was a little bit too aggressive, that they ended up looking at him, realizing he was way too overextended, and they were able to get the pick
Whoa.
and try and force things back, but he's already in their spawn.
Yeah, and using a Hexafire from long, long range doesn't end up getting a ton of kills out of it, but does have Slopothopoulos low and dead to rot. So it's right, so he and Nauk are able to get a couple kills, but still, they lost so many members in that trade that it's hard to imagine they could find this conversion. Princess Peach has made their way back in, though, and has stepped forward once again. Uber is over here to the left side, finding ways to put in a little bit more damage. As Nauk, ADSing, is able to get some good damage into Toot Toot, working together with the Zen. They find the kill. They take care of Slop as well, and maybe even in overtime, this conversion can happen for Mixer. They've already used so many of their ultimates in every trade that Celestial find make this push harder. But if Closar falls as well, perhaps they can get that chance. The Damba steps forward, anything they can do to try and throw some bodies onto the point, but every last one of them instantly get mowed down. Now a couple of return kills finally coming from Celestial as Uber and Princess Peach fall, but still, Mixer
Ooh,
able to find the conversion.
okay.
What happened there? And now they get the 4-0 win on Bright Marsh.
They were already on the back foot. They had already lost one of their priority targets that was on the point, which was the
Yeah,
Ash. As soon as she went down, everyone else started to panic. They had to pretty much make sure that they were rushing on a cart as much as humanly possible. With that being the case, that meant that there weren't a lot of tanky targets that could have sustained themselves enough. Atlas put up the divider, but once he went down, Cassie probably wasn't expecting him to go down as quickly as he did, because you
I
saw
think
Otev
so.
at least try and roll onto the cart at the very, very last second, but it wasn't close enough. He just ended up getting burnt. The minute that divider went down, it posed such a huge issue because that was one of their last men standing.
And that's tough now because, I mean, that's a round where we saw from Mix, they were willing to use their ultimates in some slightly different spots. But if they thought they can get even a little bit of momentum, find one favorable trade, and keep a little bit of that pressure going, then they were happy to take it. Now was an absolute nuisance as far as I could tell on this victory there, Fawn. A real problem. The Anara, we were wondering if they were going to get first pick value out of it. Well, I think the answer is yes. Maybe some adjustments now Celestial have to make in the next picks and bans.
Yeah, I mean, if it were me on the side of Celestial, I would get rid of that Corvus. That Corvus has just been
Sure.
pocketing too many people on the side of Mixalazub. It was a reason why they were able to dive as deep as they were, even though they were punished for it a few times. In the long run, it worked out for them for a quick 4-0. I would just get rid of the Corvus, and especially on a map like Stone Keep, there are so many corners. If you're not keeping an eye on those targets at all points in time, Corvus can heal them up almost instantly. They're going to be right back in the fight. There's not a lot of space to move, especially in the more highly contested areas. But Terminus is going to get banned out again. Another very strong point tank that we've been seeing this patch.
Now we are going to be moving into the picks and bans after the map too, as you already highlighted. This will be Stone Keep, and one more time, since we are able to now bring you these picks and bans on these Friday, Saturday broadcasts, want to make sure we give a shout out to Jithens there. He's the one that making this tool we're currently using possible, so
Mhm.
big appreciates to him. But as you mentioned, yet again we're seeing this Terminus ban, and this does surprise me a bit. Fun. I feel like that's something we mostly see on maps like Ice Mines, but obviously
Mhm.
both these teams worried Terminus would find some additional value here. That's not all they're banning, though. The Rom, the Vivian, and again the Genos, these are basically the same bands.
Yeah, these are pretty standard bans. Bans that you would expect to see not only in EU but in some of the other regions as well, unless they were trying to target ban specific people. But at the same time, once again, this makes sense. Like seeing the Rom gone, seeing the Vivian gone, Terminus and Genos, and almost like an identical start to how we saw this go off last time, except Celestial are going to
Yep.
lock in the Anar first instead of Mixalazup. They want that survivability for their own composition.
That's what it's looking like to me. And can you blame them? I mean, the Inara seemed hard to kill. I mean, how much of that was the Corvus? Probably
Right.
a lot of it with that healing was providing. But still, I think Celestial are smart to try and strip away that constant sort of point for them in that Inara. But now, Mix are doing kind of the turnaround here with the Ash, the Andro. Not quite the same as the Ash Atlas we saw last time, but still certainly a strong, aggressive first two picks.
Yeah, it seems like they're going to lock in the Atlas, and this is a very, very strong composition on Celestial side. I'm already liking what I'm seeing for them. You've got the survivability with Inara. You've got Atlas to be able to not only have that divider, which means that it makes it hard for Andro to do what he does, which is flank when he has to make sure that he's in the right position to do so. And they've got a Victor at their back too. They've already got plenty of damage available for them, but Mixalazub are the ones locking in the Corvus. I that sustainability is a lot, but Ash and Ruckus potentially on the next side of Mixalazeub. That's going to be pretty huge already. I mean, that's a very aggressive composition once again, and Mixalazeub have shown they can make this Corvus work. We'll have to see if they can do it again.
This is an aggressive comp. I think they've got some sneaky damage coming in from Ash and Ruckus. It'd be hard to underestimate those two in a battle. Some sneaky mobility as well. I mean, obviously, Andrew and Ruckus bring it, but even Ash to some extent with that shoulder bash can move around to some degree. So I mean, I think Mix have done a good job at the strap, but look at what Celestial have now done by locking in this Grover. Now they've got the Victor who now was popping off with last game. We know how strong that pick is right now. The Anara as one of the best point tanks out there, and this Grover to keep them all sustained and provide some axes. These are both pretty strong drafts.
I agree. They are pretty strong in their own right. I mean, we're seeing like almost a swap of what was last
That's
map
true.
on Bright Marsh. I mean, like you have Celestial now deciding to make sure they have this sort of survivable, sustainable composition, and Grover can provide plenty of that, not just off of his healing through walls, but also with Whirlwind. That ultimate pretty much counteracts any sort of engage that Mixalazup might want to be able to try and provide. So that's going to be hard for them to try and break those lines, especially when you have the healer that Grover is.
It's so funny. It looks like Slop and Nauk are going to be switching
Yeah.
champions here at this point as we move on to Stone Keep. Last time we saw Nauk on the Victor and we saw Slop on the Andro, but they basically swapped those around this time. It's kind of as a situation to see who can perhaps do it better. And Nauk was really almost all the damage for Mix last time. They're going to need him to step up just as much on this Andro again.
This is pretty much a standard draft, if anything, or not just standard draft, excuse me, a standard loadout for the Androxus as well. I mean, making sure that he has the heal on the Nether Step as well means that he can survive a little bit longer when he's diving directly into the back line, like he probably will against that Victor, trying to make it hard for him to live. And it's nothing too expected or too different on the side of talents. But Salazar with the Fortress Breaker, though, obviously she might want to play on point as much as she wants to if she has that, or they might actually just see like they're trying to go for control of keep.
It is going to be a big keep battle to start things off, but it looks like Celestial get there a lot sooner, able to push Mix out of there and establish a little bit of control with Klosar on the point on this Anara, but it's Nauk that gets the opening pick. Otev drops early, and we were asking, is Nauk going to be able to step up? Well, how about a double to start? Looks like the answer is yes. Slop got one in between, so it's a 2-for-1, but Mix have regained control at the midpoint. They're the ones racking up the percent now as Toot Toot does his best to try and keep this Ruckus out of the fray. Does take care of Nauk on that Androxus. That takes away some of the damage, and Devosi drops as well. We were wondering if that Ruckus would escape. Looks like Otev caught up, and now Celestial have recontrolled mid.
And that's so interesting because I thought with the Fortress Breaker he would at least try and put some more pressure onto point. I mean, trying to push it to an Atlas and Keep when we know that they're going to try to take control over Keep with that composition is a little bit questionable, but it's not really working out for them as well. That was an amazing wall on the side of the Anara.
And Celestial have really gotten out in front. Nice shot from Otev from long distance as Princess Pecha falls yet again. The Ash will have to take one more short timeout as the overtime ticking in favor of Celestial this time. Anara, closer rather, and Tutu still standing on the point. Now finally gets that kill. They're stuck keep. Someone has to come back out and find that touch, but it's not going to happen. Celestial are able to get the opening cap this time, and we'll see if they can get some of the same aggression that Mix were able to back on Bright Marsh. Already got one pick, perhaps to move forward with, but looks like Mix are starting to fall back and give up a little bit of this space to Celestial.
I mean, that's what it was that I was saying, though, is that it's hard for them to break the draft of Celestial Esports when you have a Grover at your back, despite the fact that he just got picked, which, you know, it doesn't exactly do any justice to the point it was that I was making. But at the same time, they were able to win Keep because of that. They try to push in everyone up because they know they have a Grover healer. They want to make sure that they sustain as much as possible. They're going to death fall, roll right on through Keep, and it ended up working out for them. Because of that, it was hard for Mixalazeub to regain their footing when you have to take control of so many different areas. By that point, Celestial had already been watching the sightlines they would have wanted to watch in the very beginning.
Mid-air battle ends up going the way of Nauk. Maybe not too big of a surprise there as Otev was on the Mave. Still though, waiting to see more Mix will be able to set up for this defense. Looks like they've stopped the payload at a rather favorable position and aren't going to cede this high ground over to Celestial. Toot Toot maybe a bit too far forward on his own, is able to drop down, but a nice shot there from Devozy won't let him fully regroup back. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if these mid-fight spawn keep going the way that we just saw, especially if they're going to keep being with those early keep battles the way that we had. I mean, I think Celestial are happy if they run that back a couple times, as there's Uber able to find the kill into Closar. He picked up that guillotine as the talent, so I wonder if we're going to see more of that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I mean, he has to be able to utilize it more effectively. I mean, he wasn't able to touch the cart, probably was just trying to make sure he could get out. He spied across the point as Inara was capping in the very, very beginning of this push. And because of that, he was pretty much able to live for quite some time. I mean, that's the first time I believe I've seen him use it even aggressively, if anything. He's been using it to sort of try and reposition during a lot of these fights, but hopefully we will see a lot more of it, especially if you're trying to take down those priority tanks.
Nauk again takes a battle with Otev and comes out the better. The payload continuing to move, and remember, Celestial have all their ultimates available. The Whirlwind being used as if on cue, and that does help keep the Victor still alive. Slop perhaps thankful for that Whirlwind to help him out. Now the payload suddenly has gotten very, very close. The Hexifier coming out, but a better wall essentially blocks all of it, and that means Devozy drops right on the back side of it. Good kill from Princess Pecha with some help coming out from Nauk to find one more kill to take care of Closar, but I don't know if that's going to stop their aggression. Slop gets one more return kill, though, and maybe Slop can keep this moving after all for Celestial, as they're so close on the point. It's enough for the conversion to come through, and unfortunately, Mix could not do enough.
Yeah, that is extremely unfortunate on the side of mixalazeub. And all of that is based off of the fact that the minute that Xenos knew that Andro was in the back, he told himself a couple things. Well, not a couple things. He told himself one thing. He went, I'm going to die if I don't ultimate right here. And luckily enough, everyone was already fighting on the sidelines. Everyone was already pretty low. They were trying to roll the cart in. Slop was low due to the fact that Uber's Payday was fighting him on the side by Fireplace. And because of that, a well-timed Blossom, well-timed Whirlwind made sure that not only was Grover able to live, but he made sure that around the tail end of that fight, they were able to sustain themselves and keep pushing forward. Even with the accursed arm coming out, the barrage traded him out. That wouldn't have happened if the Whirlwind wasn't used at the time it was.
The value of that late Grover pick starting to step through is this time it'll be a church side push, at least for Mix. That is enough to try and push Otev out, but Uber steps too far forward, and Slop is there to cover. Big damage from the Victor, and the first pick goes in favor of Celestial. Still a couple members back towards Church, as the keep has gone entirely to the Celestial boys. Toot, though, pays a little bit for sticking his head out. Nauk is the one that gets the kill credit. Slop working together there with the Grover. They're able to get one more kill to shut down Nauk, and the percentage reflecting that these early skirmishes have favored Celestial. They're at 57 already.
Yeah, Stone, the keep is just so powerful for Celestial Esports. Every time they've grouped up, it's been so hard for mixalazeub to break their hold over the keep because of the Grover. Because of them positioning so well together, it makes it hard for them to be able to try and win these fights. That's why they're not immediately going to point. That's why there's been no percentage. They can't keep Closar off of point when all the damage is being plugged and keep. They have to answer the damage dealers. Both Otev and the Victor are making sure they pump in damage to whoever it is that they see, and it's making it harder for them to be able to try and utilize their strategy. Even with the assert dominance, she's going to ult, and they go, okay, cool, we're just going to rewind her, right? And Xenos is going to heal everybody back up at the time that it takes for Ashe to get rewinded, however long that's going to be. And because of that, it's being able to sustain them for so long. You've got Divider and you've got Grover to hold that, to lock that area down so effectively.
And even still, it has not quite worked. I mean, we've seen this conundrum against teams with the Inara as that main tank, and how do you take care of her on the point and deal with the damage dealer simultaneously, as Mix are able to find some pretty nice kills here to slow down this push. Celestial should have to retreat, as very nearly a full wipe coming through from Mix. And what I thought was that's why we saw this guillotine there for Zen, right? Was that they wanted to make sure they could deal with this Inara at least a little bit easier using that spike. But even still, Fawn, it has not seemed easy for them. They have not been able to deal with either side of the equation very efficiently.
This is the first time we've seen mixalazeub on this map put their foot on the gas, and I think that's because they were able to get those picks towards the tail end of that push over near their spawn. Zakar was trying to roll in. That would have been a huge accursed arm, but it's not going to be much of anything. Just ults right in front of them, and you already got 3 people looking at you now. This is the turn that they would have wanted on the side of Celestial.
And now we're going to see if Mix maybe miscalculate a bit with this aggression. I mean, obviously they'll respawn back in the perfect defensive positions for this, but now Celestial can step in with 4 ultimates charged up and ready to go. It's a retreat from the Corvus, 1 needing healing. on the backside there is Celestial bring the payload entirely around this next corner. Now it's time to try and find a way to push through this arch, and a couple high ground battles already kicking off. We've seen OTEV look for this duel with an out several times, but this time OTEV comes out the better. He has not won a lot of those trades, but wins one now when it's critically important. Uber gets the response, though, as he takes care of Slot, but Toot Toot's still healthy and up top, recognizes where that Grover, or not the Grover rather, but the Ruckus is, and is looking to try and take him down by himself. Doesn't quite have the damage to get this job done, but keeps him on lockdown, and perhaps I misspoke. Toot Toot has to pay for it with his life, but gets the kill. Meanwhile, now waiting on the back with that accursed arm to duel OTEV yet again.
Despite how that may have looked, despite the picks that they got, the Whirlwind once again in the same spot carries a lot of that team fight. We saw Uber's payday, or at least saw his outline in the back line, trying to put pressure onto that Grover. What happened? He ulted again, knew he was in the back, knew he was one of the priority targets, and it kept him alive for so long. Even these exiles are huge on the side of Celestial Esports.
Devosi threw his body at the cart rather, wasn't enough. Now does the same thing. He falls as well. Now finally they have been able to get their Ash back down, but Princess Peach dies instantaneously. That is supposed to be the tank, right? But maybe the Hexifier can help. No, Slop does it again. Shuts down the Ruckus mid-ultimate. Celestial now returning the favor with a 4-0 of their own.
And that's partly what I was saying in the very beginning towards the draft phase. It's going to be hard for them to force any sort of regression when you have that Grover on Stone Keep. What do they do every time? They ran into Keep, they grouped up, they deathballed it. What was their answer? Pretty much nothing. Every time they dove into the back line, immediately, if Uber's Pele was there, it didn't really matter. He would whirlwind. If there was anyone else, if the Androxus was in the back line, it didn't matter. He would ultimate every single time. And both times it was at the crest where the cart was about to roll in to base that it became an issue for mixalazeub to try and capitalize. All because, not because of their healer, the Corvus was doing what you would expect him to do. He was pocketing people where he could. He was spreading out his healing as much as possible, but at the same time, it didn't come down to the healers. It more so came down to the tanks, because sure, Grover was a huge portion of how that went, but at the same time, what happened every time Ash would have tried to assert dominance? She got rewinded, right? Every time that would try and happen, Atlas was there. Okay, even if there wasn't a rewind and she managed to get the ultimate off, the divider or the wall was there too. Means they have to reformulate their plan. They have to go somewhere else. They have to peek at it from a different angle. It was just too much for mixalazeub to try and deal with, especially in a lot of those close quarters.
Things got out of control in a hurry there on Stone Keep. That means now, Fawn, this set all tied up at 1-1. So we can go ahead and start getting ready for those picks and bans for map number 3. And I think now, Fawn, we're starting to move into a pretty important question, which you touched on, which is, does that Inara deserve a ban at this point? It seems like whichever team has that stronger point tank has been the one that's come out on top, because the other team can't find an efficient answer to the front line and the back line simultaneously. Would you be taking it away at this point?
I think if they get rid of the terminus, which they do, I think they should try and force Anara out of the pool because of what exactly that you had mentioned before, Finch. It was the fact that they have a lot of this sustainability. It seems like whoever gets the Anara first is really the winner here because they have that point control. What has been the response every time we've seen Anara? We've seen a composition that tries to draft a very, very aggressive comp. Just forget the point. We're going to try and fight. We're going to see if we
Right.
can gain the point afterwards. But it's never come down to that. It's never come down to we got the picks that we wanted. Now we can force them out. But I mean, I'm not too sure. Even they still get the Anar. They don't get rid of that. But at the same time, they instead get rid of the Ruckus, which means that both Corvus and Genos are open.
Right, so at least both sides will be able to have one of those big pocket healers. But for
Hmm.
me, what's felt like the problem, Font, is that even the aggressive team tries at the very beginning of one of those mid fights to kind of group up and find a battle, they can't quite get that pick in time. They end up getting pulled back out to when instead of having their 2v1 they were looking for, maybe they get a little bit of help from their Victor, who's able to ADS and help them out, right? Or someone else able to provide a little bit of damage. They get the return pick. I mean, how many times did the Zen end up getting picked at the top of
Right.
those mid fights when they were the ones aggressively looking for a trade? So there's got to be something to make that a little bit easier for them. Mix this time, get that Inara, but now it's Atlas and Genos for Celestial. They've got to be feeling good about those two picks.
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, Mixala's up. I mean, they have the Anar, they have the Ash as well.
Yeah.
And that's not only, I mean, we talked about sustainability and survivability before. They even pick up the Strix, which means that it's going to be a lot harder to make sure that Atlas is anywhere but an angle that Strix might be watching, if that makes sense. With that being this, with me saying that, I mean, you want to make sure that Divider in its own right is positioned in a way where Strix can't get free damage off because that's already a composition that he can seemingly pick apart almost instantly. Too much damage from Strix on a lot of those squishier targets is really important, but they're running a double healer. They're running Genos, they're running Grover.
Yeah.
That's a lot of survivability on the side of Celestial. And they got the Victor.
I like this idea. That's a great point. I mean, with the Vivian band, not only do they somehow manage to get the victor, but they've paired this Grover Genos together to provide all this sustain. I mean, it's decent control too. The Void Grip and the Axe provide some decent tools to allow for Victor to get off the ground running. Plus, you have this Atlas for a little bit more control, a little bit of denial in terms of some of that long range help from this Strix. I don't mind what Celestial have here at all, and I believe Kresnik will let me know if I'm way off base. Believe we're going on to Splitstone for this next map too. So
Okay.
this is one, yeah, he's confirmed for me that we are going to Splitstone. This is one where I think Strix could be dangerous, but maybe these picks from Celestial could slow that down.
Oh, this is absolutely, yeah, okay. That's absolutely huge. I mean, Celestial, okay, they go, all right, we've seen the aggressive comps. Both teams have tried to make it work these past 2 games. Hasn't been working out for them. So we're going to try and beat you at your own game. We have Genos, we have Genos, we have Grover, we have a lot of sustain, but we also have Buck, the anti-flank himself.
Yeah.
That's pretty huge because that means that they'll be able to live pretty much for as long as they feel like. They can sort of force things in different directions, and them having that victor with an Atlas on the same team, that's huge. Barrage is really what has made Atlas a lot of a I like Victor is pretty much the counter pick to Atlas, if anything. That barrage is absolutely huge. It stops the divider wall, and because of that, they have it on their team now.
Yeah.
So that means that mixalazeub can't sit in the back, even though that's what their composition would want to draft.
And I think what has changed this is the map pick, right? Because this is one where I think Strix gets a little bit more value than maybe where he normally would. And that's perhaps why you see it being picked up over that Victor. But that means that the Victor is obviously left open then in that
Right.
spot, which means he can be grabbed alongside one of the picks that it works well with or would
Oh.
have countered the most. So this has potentially put Celestial in a really good spot. But don't forget, I mean, they still have the Anara over there for Mix. They do still have the Strixes and the Corvus. Certainly a lot of strong picks in their own right.
Well, I mean, at the same time, you have that Genos with Luminary Mark, and I actually saw for a very brief second that Buck actually took Bounce House, which is not the bulk up that we typically see, which means that he's not trying to play as far back. They want to be aggressive, and we see it right here off the divider.
It's exactly what we saw going on last time, except Celestial coming out much better here this time, able to bring the Bozy right back up. Perfect use there from Toot Toot, and able to find the second kill there with Ubers. That's all the Atlas making those first 2 opening picks come through for Mix. Now, 42% in their back pocket, but it's Celestial that are the ones in control. They've been able to push a couple members back, or rather, excuse me, everything that went well for Celestial for the retake, and so now they're holding on up to about 42% in their back pocket and trying to keep Princess Peach controlled over near the lava wall. It's working for now. Otep with some healing, able to regroup with the squad, but now he's going aggressive, takes care of Nock easily, taking out that Strix, and looking like he even wants a little bit more.
Yeah, he moved immediately into the back line as soon as he had that opportunity, and now we see all the kills coming up on the side of Celestial, and that's exactly what I was talking about before. You have that double healer, you have the damage amp from the Genos on Luminary, which means that Buck can be aggressive when he sees a right to, and you have Grover for that survivability as well. The divider played perfectly because of the fact that both Cassie and Strix don't have anything that goes for that divider. Atlas is going to be at the angles that they are trying to look at. Where was Cassie and Ash? They were by the pitch spinners. The minute that happened, the minute Atlas threw out his divider, Uber's Payday had to back off.
And we're seeing more value from that bounce house as Otep continues to get aggressive inside these mines now. Uber's Payday is going to have to back up just a little bit. I'm saying that, but he's stepping forward looking for the peaks. Otep gets the kill onto Corvus, and finally, Uber is able to step back just a little bit now that he's got Princess Peachy here to provide that front line. But there's the barrage big use block from long range, takes care of now. Princess Peachy falls as well, and maybe Celestial can keep this aggressive going. Uber's Payday falls as well, and suddenly Celestial are storming in to try and find this conversion.
Fish, this draft kind of slapping, honestly. I did mention the fact, and I did mention the fact that Celestial Esports, it's hard to sit still against the draft that Celestial have because of the fact that they force so much off the side of Genos Luminary buff. That is huge, and when you don't have to worry about that, where's Victor? Victor's right next to the Grover. They're being healed up. Genos is going to be there too. everyone's pretty much grouping up. And if you try and dive on one person to the back, if we're trying to focus them down, what happens? Strix immediately got barrage the minute that Victor used it. And for those of you that don't know, when he used the barrage, even if Strix is invisible, it still can be procced. So he knew where Strix was standing. If he went invisible because he heard the barrage, he already knew where he was. Made it hard for him to sit there, and they got to pick because of that. It's hard for them to try and maximize on this draft when they're just being out-sustained.
Yeah, it almost feels to me like they were expecting the Strix pick, huh? Because the barrage gives them one counter to it, but obviously the buck gives them a second as Otev able to shut down Devozy. Ubers has already fallen as well, so now only 3 members left up for the next 7 seconds for Mix to try and hold out. But Celestial are already storming in. Now ends up getting moved. He gets set back again by the Atlas into the Void Grip, and now able to fall yet again. This Atlas has controlled the pace of the game. Princess Pecha, the second, made it back out, ends up falling again. Another conversion for Celestial, and suddenly we're 2-0.
I actually have a quick question. Okay, good. I'm glad you brought up the slash lines because Ash is 0-4. Not the worst thing, but on the side of mixalazeub, everyone is negative, and that's something that Otev also may have considered when he actually went bounce house. You see, he has stomping grounds. He gets 75% after a killing blow of his cooldowns, or of his active cooldowns reduced. That's absolutely huge. He took the leg day 3 and the momentum as well, which means that he's still tanky and can still dive all the way into the back line. What do we see when Ash tried to fight him up above? She used the shoulder bash, but as soon as Buck jumped, it canceled the shoulder bash. That means that Ash pretty much has no sort of way to sustain herself by the fidget spinners or anywhere that she might try and do. It's canceling out their entire draft because they have to play off of the Ash. That's part of the main reasons as to why. They have too many people looking at them with the Victor and the damage amp. Inari can't do it alone, so that's why they're going to try and force something new.
Seismic Crash does get the 2-man stun. That sets up for the opening pick as Nauk takes care of Slopodopolis. And a double kill from their Strix was desperately needed. Make it a triple kill now for Nauk as he's popping off. I'm telling you, the value is there. He just hadn't had a chance to breathe with Otev breathing down his neck. But finally, some comfort for Nauk in the backline on this Strix, and the percentage reflecting that nicely. 62% climbing. Celestial going to struggle to even find a retouch.
That comeback mechanic is going to be huge as well. They may have gotten the pick, but can they make it back to cart? I don't think they will be able to. Buck actually manages to jump on it. That's going to be huge, especially with this assert dominance.
But there's the setback that is going to bring one back into range for Xenos to get the kill. Slop is just laying on the left trigger here at this point, pumping out even more damage as Celestial Mix are starting to struggle back a little bit. There's the Whirlwind being used. Xenos knows they can't afford to give up any ground with 99% already there for Mix here at this point. Otev has made his way to the back line, but has to retreat. Can't afford to keep forward from there. Now comes the leap to the back, but wasn't able to find the Strix like he normally does. Instead, Nauk is down here on the bottom looking for more damage. Just barely the Atlas able to get out of there.
Got him super low as well. I mean, the flare brought Atlas down to nothing, but that rewind just canceled everything out. They're at least able to get the picks, which that means that's huge, but they've already traded 2 for 2.
It is 2 for 2, and now look how low the Cassius doesn't slow down this Corvus, though. Another kill for Keys as he's able to shut down one more. Devozy gets another kill, and Mix are able to get the objective capture in the end. Some of that was the comeback mechanic, but a lot of it was that triple kill from Nauk to start it off.
Yeah, and that's absolutely huge how Anar started at the very beginning of that fight. With comeback mechanic there, it means that Celestial Esports were playing against the percentages. They couldn't take their time because it's 4% every tick. That comeback mechanic being a huge factor, but that was one entirely off of that seismic crash because Celestial Esports were trying to scramble to find their way back onto the cart and back onto the point, but they weren't able to because of how many of them were lost during that very end, towards the tail end of that engagement.
Otev losing another duel there on the right-hand side. He's had a great game here so far. I've only a couple, maybe even a few small missteps there from him. Right now, Mix struggling to try and get around this corner and back towards that cart. At this point, Celestial have a pretty comfortable, aggressive position that they've been able to establish. But you talked about a little bit, the comeback mechanic, the Inara, Princess Pecha getting up there aggressive, as now finally Mix are able to start pushing forward. What do you need to see more from Mix if they're going to be able to find the conversion here or another mid-fight?
I think that was a very, very well played perspective from the Princess, from Inara, if anything, because of the fact that it forced them to not look down one singular sideline. Last time that we saw that fight broke out, it was by fidget spinners, and both Ash and Cassie were already staring down that angle. Nobody else was able to open them up on a flank, so if anything, they might, even though their draft might be different, they actually got a huge assert dominance towards the tail end of this, though.
Yeah, fatty ult there coming out from the Ash, able to help lock down 2 and set up 2 kills to go the way of Mix. Perhaps the conversion is in the cards. They turn that into 3 kills. Now the Strix is here, comes through and shuts down Xenos. That's easy when you got sight lines like that. And I think Otev not even going to try and jump his way out there, perhaps certain that he'd just be giving up another death, perhaps even more percent. But now we're right back to 2-2. No comeback mechanic here for either one of these two teams. So a more honest mid-fight this next time to see if Mix can find another way to repeat.
Yeah, they have to be more aggressive, I think. I think they don't just need to send Ash there. They use the assert dominance towards the tail end of that, so locking down fidget spinners might be a little bit harder for mixalazeub. But they are able to open things up, I think, if they do try and send a few more people there. Just say, forget the point. She's got 50% lifesteal with Indomitable. She's got the shoulder bash cooldown. Obviously, we have the DR to sort of complement that. You have to be able to try and fight as best as you can around fidget spinners. I don't think they can sort of try and play it slow. Celestial Esports, they can play as slow as they want with 2 healers. I mean, it doesn't really matter. They'll be able to out-sustain them at every turn. And it's up to Corvus to try and make sure that he can heal as much as possible, but it seems like they're just getting pushed out by Celestial Esports, if anything.
Celestial came in with 5 ultimates at the ready. Have already used 1. The Genos ultimate on cooldown for now. Now, the ultimate coming out there from the Corvus, and that did provide some decent control. It's forced a couple members to push further back, but even still, no kills have come through yet, but a bunch of stuns have set up for some damage to come through. It's Ubers that finds that very first kill, now rolling forward, looking for Xenos, but good work from the Grover in order to retreat back further, but Uber's getting aggressive now, knows he wins those trades, finds the shots, but can't fully retreat. Slop gets the return kill, but look at the percent. How much of it is favoring Mix at this point? 66% to 0 for Celestial. They can't find a way onto the point at all.
Slop got a double, that's a 2-for-2, but you already mentioned it right there. They can't find their way onto the point. They have to bide their time. Even Toot was brought extremely low when he tried to make his way onto cart, or at least I should say on the point against that Anara, and he's eating a lot more damage. It's not possible. They can't really stop them from looking at everybody. Another good seismic crash as well. They played aggressive. They played around fidget spinners on the side. The minute that Princess Pekka got her ultimate online, she threw the seismic crash, and once again, it opened the door for Mixalazeub.
Overtime ticking down. That means it'll be yet another mid-win here for Mix. They're up 3-2 and looking to close this one out with a conversion. Xenos continually running away. Devosi not quite able to find that last little bit of damage necessary for the kill. In fact, Slot gets the return kill on the backside of it, and Devosi has to start retreating. Otev and Tutu both lighting up the kill feed, so the aggression for Mix should be slowed down a little bit here, Fawn, so they can start trying to figure out how to regroup and push past this zone.
Yeah, I think that's. I think this goes to say how Mixalazeub are adapting, if anything. I mean, the seismic crash gets utilized, finds 3 people again during the second time this happened, almost like a rerun of the same show, if anything. So it's really, really hard to try and stop them from doing that. When everybody's grouped up towards fidget spinners, they know what they have to do. They know they have to play a little bit more aggressive on the side of Celestial Esports, and because of that, Mixalazeub are taking advantage of it. Wow, Anara's doing that. When she had that ultimate, Ash was already behind them. She was already being super, super aggressive on another portion of the map, so it forced everybody that could have stopped her that could have stopped her shoulder bash or her assert dominance to look elsewhere.
Finally, Mix have at least made their way back towards the cart at this point, so they can get that rolling and start to move around this next corner, but Celestial can just fall back to comfortable positions. Toot having to take a seat yet again. Slop at least pulling out the barrage, does fire once to put out some decent damage, but no direct kills as a result. Only a minute left for Mix to round around this last corner, but look how far they have managed to push back Celestial. They've given up some of those great defensive positions, but Celestial still get the first kill by locking down Devosi. Perhaps can find a second as now falls as well. It's Otev with the double kill, and Mix will have to fall back once again before looking for this conversion.
A bit of a disconnect there as well. I mean, you saw Ash push up through Mineshaft, and Nauk was there, but you saw the 3 of them, and they were already all the way back where Cart was. Most of them were grouped up. They weren't really pushing up too far, and so they get that early pick, and now you see Celestial wants to be a little bit more aggressive. They found their opportunity. Now they want to push it, see if they can zone to keep Mixalazeub from getting back to the point. Anara's living for quite some time, though, and almost gets healed back up. I don't know if she's going to be able to survive, though.
But Devosi has dropped.
Wow.
Getting this kill into Otep, though, is huge, and perhaps Mix can make something happen. At this point, those seconds left don't even really matter. This is going to have to get done in overtime, but Slop still has decent positioning, gets some decent damages, but not found the first kill, taking care of Xenos, but immediately traded out is the Cassie, and with Slop putting in decent damage from this topside position. I don't know if Mix will be able to find this conversion after all, especially if they end up losing this Inara. The wall buys some time, but Slop aggressively dashes around, wants to get there before the heals can come through, but even still it was not enough. Devosi now trying to push forward. Void grips out, but uses the assert dominance to come crashing in, locks down one more member. Nox gets that first kill into close. Our Slop brings out the barrage, and that does take care of Devosi. It's a double kill for Slop as he gets two. Celestial find the defense, and we're going all the way to a 7th point.
Yeah, that is a really, really good look for Celestial to be able to sort of work with what it was that they had. When Princess Pekka got dove, the reason why I was so surprised was because not only was Corvus healing her up, but they used the Sir Dominus towards the tail end of that round. And they also used the seismic crash because I believe Princess Pekka was afraid she would die. They committed to that when Otep moved all the way into the back. So they burned a very huge ultimate. They won't have that coming into this next fight, nor the assert dominance. So I
Right.
wonder if that's going to try and change things. For me personally, I feel like it's definitely going to try and change how this beginning fight is going to have to go because they don't have anything to CC anybody by fidget spinners. That's worked for them every single time, but they don't have that in their back pocket this go around.
Celestial come in with not just the numerical ult advantage, but just better ultimates as 2-2 takes some damage on his initial push in. Yet again, the early ultimate out from Celestial is used to try and force out some cooldown. Slop goes down, but as does the Cassie on the other side, but it's a double kill for Otep. He's had a great game on this buck. You were excited when it was locked in, and we're starting to see why. Closer gets the third kill,
Oh,
and
man.
there's a second when Closar gets the double. Now Celestial in very comfortable control here in the mid.
They still tried to do what was the right thing in the sense of it being that at the same time they were able to push in through fidget spinners. Anar didn't have her ultimate, but she played with the Ashe. They tried to see if they could get a pick and be as aggressive as possible, but two walked right on past them knowing he had the rewind and put pressure directly onto Nauk in the back. The Strix couldn't really just sit there and do anything, so it forced him out of his positioning, but all 2-2 did was rewind back to his, so they already had control over that fight. Even if Anar was able to get a pick at the beginning, which she did, it still didn't play that huge into.
Slop gets the first kill of this sort of secondary engagement. Even though Celestial won the first, remember, they have less tanks. They almost always have to win a good dive before they can afford to get aggressive. We were able to take care of Closar. Otep drops as well, and they really need the damage from this buck. But they end up losing their Inara thanks to Slop. Great work from him. So maybe Celestial can make this happen after all. It's going back and forth the control of this midpoint, trying to chase out the Cassie, but Slop ends up paying for that one. 93% and climbing as it's just the Corvus sitting back on point. That is enough. Mix are the ones that come out on top on Split Stone, and it's 2-1.
I was actually a little bit worried because I thought with Uber's Payday being all the way in the back, he had to back up. He had to respect the space it was that not only Victor was created, but Grover rotating around to make sure that he healed Victor back up. He can't win that 2-on-1 fight. So with that being the situation, he backed all the way up. I thought it was going to be curtains for him, if anything, because I was like, how is he going to be able to make this work? But then I saw Ashe pushing up where Victor and Grover initially were. So they had to look at him and they couldn't ignore the Cassie in the back. She was going to go try and go for dismounts with Corvus gaining that percentage the entire time. So a great adaptation and great response from the Ashe to make sure that she can try and base everything off of that Cassie in that very brief moment.
This has been a pretty impressive set that we've gotten to enjoy so far. Pretty sure the Inara is still undefeated. Who knows
Yeah.
how much that means here at this point. But we are definitely going to be bringing you plenty more Paladins action. I would not expect you to go anywhere. We'll be right back with more in just a few minutes. Welcome back to the PPC here in Europe. It's still Finch and Fawn, and we are still in the middle of an excellent set here so far. We have seen Celestial and Mix go back and forth. It started off with 2 4-0s in a row, and then, as if to cosmically balance the universe, we had a 7-pointer to follow it up in Stone Quarry. So truly, who knows what to expect from this fourth map here, Fawn?
Yeah, who knows? I mean, maybe we might be able to expect an Anara ban this time around. I mean, she is undefeated in this set, so hopefully, I mean,
That's
either
right.
team will be able to get rid of her. If not, then they're still going to stick to the Terminus more than likely. They're going to stick to the ROM and especially the Vivian. I feel like that's super important to be able to do. But I'm interested to see if they're gonna try and leave both pocket healers open. Are they gonna try ban one or ban the other? That's what I'm more so curious about.
Yeah, I'm curious to follow it too because so far the bans have been relatively unchanging as we move to those picks
Mhm.
and bans for game number 4. I'm excited here to see, kind of as you were saying, are we going to see any adjustments with those healers? Will we see any adjustments with the front lines? Victor has done very well, I feel like, throughout this set too, and he's been let through in just about every one of these games. So there's a lot to kind of keep our eyes on here. So far, the Terminus band is about the same thing that we've been seeing throughout this entire picks and ban phase. The same with this ROM band.
Yeah, and it seems like nothing's really too out of the norm yet. Terminus and Rom both gone. Something that is like you just mentioned, have we've been seeing pretty much this entire go around. But Genos is actually going to be banned. That's a
Mm.
huge ban to get rid of, especially if they don't ban the Corvus here. And it's actually going to be a Nara. Guess they were listening. But that being the case, I mean, they do get rid of one of the stronger frontliners, which means we could potentially see, of course, Ash, Atlas that we've been seeing. We could see the Fernando potentially. I mean, there's a lot of possibility there.
There is, but it looks like Celestial first overall will be picking up the Atlas, and we saw a ton of setback value in the last game. I mean, that Atlas looked strong in just about every aspect, so I don't see any reason why Celestial wouldn't want to be going back to this one again. But what you pay for with banning things like the Anara and the Genos is that Vivian is still open,
Hmm.
and Mix, I think, will happily take a Vivian Ash pick.
Right, exactly. But Corvus is also still open as well. That's a character that hasn't really been locked in. We'll have to see what Celestial are going to lock in for the time being. It's actually going to be Grover. It's going to be pretty huge. It's going to be a lot of sustainability on their side and Bomb King as well. If they really
Yeah.
wanted to, they could just make him the only damage dealer that they have on Celestial side. Run just in its entirety, end up running 2 healers if they want to. But mixalazeub are actually going to get the Corvus. That's already going to be pretty big for them on times in terms of sustainability. Will it be? And it is. It is
Oh,
actually
wow.
the Fernando. There it is. And this is a little bit interesting because he's somebody that we've seen every now and again, especially with his buffs. The changes to Angus, changes, excuse me, to Aegis
Mhm.
means that he actually has 4 seconds directly onto his shield, which means that he's not going to be out of the fight for long, as opposed to previously. And with Khan not being too much of a common pick anymore, it means that he's sort of raised to the higher end of the spectrum in terms of point tanks.
I would say so too. Fernando feels pretty strong right now. And I think you're right to highlight that 4 second cooldown potentially for the shield and it being brought up much more quickly than it used to be as part of that reason why we're seeing more of him. Celestial, though, lock in this Victor the Ruckus and the BK as you highlighted earlier. You joked that maybe they wouldn't need any more damage, but I think they went ahead and got some more
Yeah.
damage between the Ruckus Victor and that Bomb King.
Mhm.
So that is a lot for Victor to deal with, and or not Victor, but Fernando to deal with. And I feel like some of these characters we saw with Tiberius, but even Bomb King, anyone that can get past that shield fun can cause Fernando some real tough problems.
Yeah, and that's going to be what it comes down to. I mean, breaking that shield on Fernando, even if it is 4 seconds, 4 seconds could be a long time, especially when you're on a map like Jaguar Falls. It means that it's a lot more dangerous for Fernando to pretty much just sit there and try and be a shield bot, if anything, right? Because you have so many angles that not only can he be looked at, but they're going to be fighting a lot more. That shield cooldown is not only important, but it's also how Princess Pekka is going to be able to manage it as well. Deep roots, having that crippling throw axe, making sure that everyone around that person that he crippling axe is going to be pretty much locked down. Of course, he takes the Aegis as well in terms of talent, but the Rezel is what's still look at here for sure.
So far, everything looking pretty traditional. You know, we're seeing a little bit more of this guillotine. Talk to me about that, Fawn, because I thought we'd moved on to seeing Zen with the Yomi in
Mhm.
most instances.
Yeah, and I think that's what's really important
Five,
as well. I mean, you have Fan the
four,
Flames being
three,
means that of course
two,
80%
one.
of that active
Let
cooldown
the
is gonna
battle begin.
be
It
delivered
begins
to your abilities, which means that he's
now.
going to be up and in the fight very, very commonly. That guillotine means that they can burn priority targets that they might try and focus on, that they need to focus on. If there's somebody that needs to be answered, Zen can burn them, and then they can try and adapt to that situation after that. Salaza are looking for the aggressive picks here, which is why really nobody's on point on either side, neither
Yeah.
Celestial or Mixalaza, but they have 15% for Celestial.
Yeah, it's like if there's none in Inara, I don't want to stand on the
Yeah.
point as Nauk gets the very first kill of this one. Tutu drops early onto that Ruckus pick, and things already looking decent for Mix. They give up a little bit of percent to begin, but now they've got control of this point. Princess Peach, though, he is going to have to fall back on the Nando, ends up
Ooh.
falling to Otep, who has had a great set so far. They give him a lot of their priority picks, and the Bomb King no exception, now falling as well. So a lot of these carries getting traded out, but they've got one member just chilling back there on the point. Finally, Devozy comes back with him, as it is the Corvus that ends up getting taken care of. 81% still going though for Mix. Someone's got to find this touch of Celestial, and it looks like it'll be 2-2.
They already have 90% on the point from mixalazeub as well, so that plays a huge role in how Celestial are going to have to try and make sure that they can't get back to point as effectively. That Rezel, when it comes online as well, it's going to make sure that Atlas Rewind is not as strong as it is in the beginning. So the longer this game goes on, the stronger mixalazeub are going to be able to get. But I can't say the same for them right now with how they end up taking the L for sure.
Not bad here, hold from Celestial. They've retaken it, but maybe Uber can be the start of it as he takes care of Sloth. Way on the side, one more member is trying to push in, but that's Otev with long-range bombs, keeping them at bay. Overtime finally comes through. Uber trying to force his way in, is able to make use of that guillotine to get the kill into Toot, and they found the touch, as Princess has found their way back onto the point. Now is the backline looking for damage, but Otev is in that Genie Bomb, isn't able to find a big explosion there, but Sloth taking care of the Fernando means Celestial will be able to find that very first mid cap and open this one up 1-0.
As much of a joke as a zoning ultimate is, that's exactly what Bomb King did. He made sure that no one was able to at least get as close as possible to the point as they wanted to. If anyone would have stepped in, he would have blown it up, they would have been bursted. No point. You can't really walk up when you have that King Bomb. It just does so much damage. It can shred anyone that's extremely squishy as well. And on top of that, they tried to use the Spite on Zen's side to see if they could get the kill onto Toot, but they used the Whirlwind to counter that out. It means that he was able to be sustained. It didn't even die to the ultimate, which made that even more huge on the side of Celestial. So that Grover's going to be a huge issue for them until mixalazeub are able to sort of scale this resilience and this cauterize that they are building until it gets later on in the game. They might have to stall for it.
Well, against a similar composition, Mix struggled in the early game, so I think you might be right about this itemization needing to come online for them to deal with this comp. They get the first kill in the 2-2 back. Princess Beach getting the double is able to take care of Otev and 2-2 both, so that should stall out Celestial for the moment, especially with Close Star falling as well. So much needed time being bought for Mix here at this point, and that's not the only thing that I think this draft or this team is going to have to work on for a while. I mean, they've got a lot here with this Fernando up front. He's plenty tanky, but it feels like to me Princess Peach is getting taken out of these mid fights a little bit too quickly.
Yeah, it seems like Toot's going to try and go around on the side. He's trying to create space, but he knows that people are there. He's just going to dive directly onto the back line of Vivian with the Hexafire. That might be huge, but he has to back off almost instantly.
Yeah, it does not work out for him there, but I like the idea from that Ruckus. Does at the very least get them back, absorb some cooldowns, and even put in some decent damage. Otev able to find the kill onto Uber, and that should open things a little bit more without having to worry about this Zen. Looks like the Assert Dominance comes through. Certainly does, but even still Mix struggling. Otev gets the kill through it, and Princess Peach, the only one still alive there at the back, holding on for dear life with that shield. But, I mean, I don't know how they're supposed to step forward. Is able to find that touch, gets the shield back up as well, but it melts quickly, buys a few seconds, puts the wall up to block any more damage, and I don't think that Fernando's dying breath was quite enough. Closer with that final kill means Celestial gets the conversion.
And I think we've been seeing, like, every time Ashe has been locked in, she's just been getting bullied hard. I mean, like, she used the Assert Dominance as well, and then towards the tail end of that fight, but gets Poppy Bombed out of it immediately. If it wasn't the Poppy Bomb, it was a rewind. As a matter of fact, that tried to happen one of the times that they were trying to fight for this first initial point capture on this map. She used the Assert Dominance, and Atlas rewinded her immediately. That's why they're prioritizing these Rezils so heavily, and that's why Princess Pekka already has Resilient 3. It's too important for them not to have, especially when the shield gets burned down as quickly as it is, thanks to Sloth.
As you mentioned, I mean, there have been some struggles so far, I think, for this Nando, but this is good work to pick up this resilience, give a better chance for them to come out and fight. I mean, as you highlighted earlier, perhaps it is just some itemization needed for Mix to be right back into this one. Otherwise, they're staring down a 2-0. Remember, they will have the comeback mechanic helping them if they can make their way onto the point. And they already have built up a little bit of percent, right around 23, as Toot and Close are taking a fight over here towards the statue side, are able to get the opening pick as well. Now ends up falling. Toot is right behind that, though, and the King Bomb finds some stuns. It does cost Otev his life, though, as he stepped up a little bit further. Devozy, though, not ready to give up on this one just yet. Has to use the shoulder bash to retreat, and Celestial now have at least a little bit of mid control.
Yeah, Barrage is still in the back pocket of Celestial as well, so that's going to be pretty huge if they try and make their way back on the card. Of course, he's going to utilize the Barrage to make sure they can't stand there any longer. And he might want him to a Hexafire in midair as well. That's going to be a pretty big pick, especially with 2-2 ripping it up in the back line.
Is still looking for yet another trade, having this close range battle up against the Zen, I believe, and Oteb ends up cleaning up the kill onto Princess Pekka. I mean, as you mentioned earlier, perhaps that resilience providing some help, but I don't know how much help it is up against all these bombs coming out from Oteb. Celestial get yet another midpoint. That's 2 in a row with the conversion in between for the 3-0 lead, and perhaps a chance to close out yet another map with the 4-0.
It's going to be a huge rewind as well. I mean, make sure you take care of that Vivian. No one can really sit still on the side of mixalazeub because Celestial are just so good at being able to look down these sight lines in these choke points, whatever it may be. And off the back of the King Bomb, were they able to submit that point capture for Celestial Esports. Bomb King playing such a huge role in this fight and just in this game. And I'm actually curious, can I see the damage numbers for a second, Krez? Is there any way you can bring up the damage chart for me to see that? And I'm actually surprised. It's actually the Victor that's going to be able to lead up a lot of different stuff. But he is the one breaking the shield, so he's going to be able to look at a lot of different targets more effectively and more consistently than Bomb King is. Bomb King is just locking down those sidelines.
Suppose so, and doing some good damage to try and keep this Fernando in line as well. But finally, we see a bit of a good defense coming out there from Mix. Got a couple kills and have pushed back Celestial, at least for now. But they have so much time to work with here at this point, Fawn. 1 minute and 20 seconds still to work with, and they've already got the payload so far pushed forward. But this last choke points can often be the toughest. Klostar will be that leading man for them, really the only traditional tanky presence for them, as Ruckus can sometimes mean that, but a lot of the times he's doing this, diving into the backline, taking care of Nauk. Uber falls as well. Slop's the one that got that kill. Oteb takes care of the Fernando, and suddenly, all at once, the aggression from Celestial has broken open the base of Mix, and they're bringing this payload around the final corner.
They're drawing so much attention from so many different angles. They have to respond to 2-2 in the back line, and when they're not doing that, they have to pay attention to the people, obviously, that are rolling in the cart, because what else are they going to do in this situation? They have to pretty much sit there and get exiled like Atlas is doing almost instantly off the back of a King Bomb.
The King Bomb sets it up. It's a 4-0 in favor of Celestial Esports, and we have now seen this in 3 of the 4 maps at this point, Fawn. It has been dominance from one team or the other, aside from the one map, I believe Splitstone, that went all the way to point 7. But it feels like whenever one of these teams figures something out and picks bans or with the draft, they get it and run with it.
Yeah, and it's pretty huge seeing this composition being brought out. I mean, the Bomb King was there. I mean, he did use his King Bomb, of course, and try to spread out damage as much as he could. But at the end of the day, it was the Victor that was the star player.
Yeah.
Because of that, I mean, he's the one breaking the Fernando shield as much as possible. Sure, 4 seconds is not a long cooldown. It's definitely way less than what Fernando used to have, but that 4 seconds is still a long time, and we saw that being demonstrated there. Every time the shield went up, it got broken almost instantly. Victor prioritized that wrecker, and that made it that much harder for Fernando to try and sit on point, which means they had to try and fight on the sidelines.
Right.
That's why it was huge.
And it's just like you're saying. I think what we've really noticed is that in a world where Inara is not there as your point tank, it is viable to burn down whoever that next best
Hmm.
sort of main tank or point tank is. We saw it with the Fernando this time, but when that Inara is there, it's not viable to put in damage to her, and it takes too long to win your fights on the side. You end up giving up like 60 to 70% while you're working on it. So this next time around, I think we're going to need to see Mix come up with some kind of answer, as it looks like we're moving on to Ice Mines for this next match.
So the great equalizer is what we like to call this map because of the fact that it's just so slow. You pick this map when you want to slow things down. You pick this map when you want to make sure that you can lock down or at least find some sort of strategy that wasn't working out for you beforehand. Once you get that one pick, the map is so large that eventually when you're pushing in, it becomes so much harder to try and lock down sight because of the fact that you have to run like 500 miles just to make sure that you can get there. But Victor and Androxus are going to be the first couple bans here. They're actually going to get rid of the Victor and the Andro, too powerful of a flank. And Victor, based off of his last performance, I'm not too surprised at all. And Vivian is what's going to round out the side on mixalazeub.
It's so funny. We saw Terminus banned, I feel like, the first
Hmm.
2 maps, right? And then now that we're here on Ice Mines, where I think of him having that additional value, there's no bans. But I think that's just because of the pace of this match so far. The Victor and Vivian have been too strong. Those have to be taken away. But this time, the Anara is still available. Here on a map like Ice Mines, is she going to be as powerful as we saw her be on some of those other maps?
Of course, I mean that's just how Anara is nowadays, especially with the amount of sustained survivability that she has. It
Mhm.
means that she can pretty much just sit on point
Whoa!
and live as effectively. But a first pick Ash, that's very interesting on the side of Mixalazeub. They're not going to lock in that Anara. That's pretty huge. Atlas could be the response to this, and it seems like it is going to be. So, I mean, we've seen him throughout this entire set, and he's paid off in dividends. You see
Yeah.
that once Ash gets locked in, Atlas is immediately the response to Celestial One, and that's pretty huge. Anara's still open.
Yeah, I mean, it has been a bit difficult here for them. I think that we're making some adjustments here to some of what we're seeing here on the pick screen. So
Mhm.
give us a moment while we work on that. But as you've said, I am a little bit surprised that we saw the Ash get locked in that early. We're going to take a moment to work on that pick ban screen. Don't worry, we're going to get it right back to you. So let us adjust that. But we could talk a little bit here, I think, a bit more about just Ice Mines kind of in general. I mean, you talk about it as the great equalizer, how it slows down that pace. But I do feel like our players have kind of found a way to still get a bit aggressive on this map as well these last few weeks.
And I think that's what you see with the Atlas Genos draft, especially on
Mhm.
Celestial Esports side, is that you have a way of being aggressive. We've seen Toot Toot be the aggressor on the Atlas. We've seen him create a lot of space, which means a lot of his team can follow up off of the back of that. And especially when you have it as a counter pick to Ash, as well as a very solid pick for your team regardless. Genos means that with that luminary buff, he's going to be extremely powerful and make sure that he stays, make sure that he can keep everybody up through through sustainability, but at the same time buff anybody's damage, which means that Atlas is going to be hitting a lot harder, especially with the damage buffs that he received for this patch.
Should be able to support not just this Atlas, but whomever gets locked in alongside them, though, right? I mean, it's just a strong pick at this point in time. I mean, that's why we saw it getting banned earlier on without this earlier on in this set, and that's what I was talking about. That's something that you could see develop in these longer sets, and they get dragged all the way down to that fifth map. Is that there's
Right.
sort of an individual meta that develops within the set itself. Okay, you think you can get all this stuff done with the Inara? Well, we'll ban it. Or what about with this Corvus of the Genos? We'll ban that, and you'll see it kind of move on and on. Now they've made it here towards this final Ice Mine set, or map rather. I feel like we're seeing the culmination of that as these two teams keep trying to adapt and overcome one another back and forth.
Yeah, and that's going to be pretty huge, especially on ice mines. I mean, we've seen these guys sort of play back and forth, like you mentioned before, and play it very aggressively. It's been 4-0 after 4-0, or it's been a 4-3, or it's been a 4-2, or regardless of whatever the score has been, both of these teams have really just been fighting back. And I'm glad to be able to see that this is the map they decided to go to because it's going to show the adaptation from both teams to see how they're going to try and focus their draft around how the map is typically designed. It seems like Rom and Terminus are going to be the correct bans this go around. They're going to get rid of 2 point tanks, already really powerful with the Vivian, as well as they're going to try and round things off with the
Yep.
Anara. And so we have most of those a lot of those strong frontliners out of the pool.
And so if it is, those same ones like the Ash into the Atlas Genos, which I think it is going to be, it was just the bands that
Mhm.
weren't correct this time, then this makes a lot more sense to me right now. Three of
Right.
the big tanks have been taken off: the Rom, the Ash, or the Rom, the Atlas. Sorry, the Rom, the Anar, and the Terminus. Eventually, I'll do some very basic reading, and this makes a lot more sense here to me this time that we're seeing the Ash first picked here by Mix. They have decided they have liked this Ash, even though it maybe hasn't always panned out for them, and it does give them a lot of tankiness in a world where a lot have been taken off the table.
Right, exactly. And they have a lot of sustainability too. I mean, you've got the rewind from Atlas. He could pretty much make sure that he resets his health pool. Genos for the same thing, making sure he can buff everybody and make sure that he spreads out that luminary mark, but also heals people through walls. But Mixala's up with the Victor Corvus. Like I said before, Victor is one
Not
of those
bad.
counters to Atlas because you can break right through that divider with the barrage. That's pretty huge, as well as the pocket potential and the overall spread out healing that Mixala's up have with that Corvus at their back. But Zen Khan, that's really strong too.
It is, and we have not seen a whole lot of Khan, I feel like, lately here, Fawn. So this could particularly be a very interesting pick. And as you already mentioned, you kind of have to consider that the Atlas and the Khan are going to be getting maybe a little bit more than what you would normally expect with that Genos there helping them out. The Zen as well. I don't know if they have a traditional sort of DPS that I would normally expect, something like a Cassie or a Leon. I mean, obviously the Vivian and the Victor have already been taken off the table at this point, but you'd think they'd want one more pick to go alongside this. The BK is open, maybe that.
Maybe, but it doesn't look like they're gonna try and draft it on the side of Mixalazub at least. They want to go for the Talus Cassie, and Talus is somebody that maybe we would have laughed at being picked maybe like about last year or so, right?
Sure.
But nowadays, Talus is extremely strong, even with the nerfs. We've seen how aggressive he can be, and he's gotten those priority picks. He's annoying to deal with, especially nowadays. I mean, you have a lot of this pocket potential and these heals through walls. That means that he can pretty much reset back to his rune of travel, get his health back, and then even still continue to push up. So they're going to try and counteract with what it is that is being dealt with on the red team, a lot of sustainability with their own sort of try to comeback factor. I mean, they're just going to try and fight as much as they can on the side of mixalazeub. Celestial are the ones that have to play really super far back, but they've built a lot of counters to Ashe. That's their only tank, and that's going to be hard for her to go up against a Khan Atlas. That's like the two worst people you could fight against is Ashe.
I think they are making life a little bit difficult on this Ashe as we move into our fifth and final map for this very first set out of Europe today, putting a lot of pressure onto Princess Pekka at this point. But we'll see. I mean, they've got plenty of damage in the back to try and make up for that, though, with this Victor, the Cassie, and the Talus as well. And I want to ask you about this Strix. I mean, are you worried about this Strix perhaps and this true power being used by Devosi to make his way back there and kind of bunker bust Slapodopoulos off the sniper?
I would be a little bit worried too because of the triple DPS from mixalazeub. I mean, Talus is going to be the person that you were just mentioning. He's going to be the one that's going to be in the back line trying to take care of Strix. Strix wants to be able to sit there and free fire, but a lot of their composition doesn't exactly let him do that. You have to worry about the grenades from Victor as well, along with the fact that Victor's damage is already extremely high. But it seems like they want to try and fight early off by Barn.
They do. Stepping forward quickly is Toot Toot and getting a wall down so they can control this neutral barn territory. And it absolutely works. Slop gets the first kill. Even though it cost them OTEV, as long as Slop is in a comfortable position, then this could keep happening. A double kill to open things up for the Strix. For Slapodopoulos, they've already got some control. Now Closer can start to get aggressive, but I think perhaps the dash a bit off the mark there, a little too far, able to make it back to cover. And they've got Princess Pekka line locked down as well. All the while, look at this percent just racking up. This is what can make Ice Mine so difficult. It's almost impossible to retake once you've lost mid control.
Yeah, it's extremely hard to make it back to point at all because of the fact that it's so spread out. Just like I was mentioning before, a nice headshot as well from Slapodopoulos. Oh
The
my
double?
goodness, he's just running a train right now. He's running the tear on their entire team. That's absolutely insane from the side of Celestial. Another kill too.
Yeah, he's absolutely not done. Essentially a triple kill, 3 in a row for young Slop. Here I was worried that perhaps this Talus might pose a problem for him. I mean, we have not yet made it to the ultimate, which is where I was giving him a lot of credit, but I don't know that Slop's worried about it. Already off to a great start here on Ice Mine. This is what I meant about the ability for Ice Mine to sort of help you get aggressive. I mean, I know that you are kind of frozen out if you're mixed, pushed out initially, but Celestial got into control very quickly and never gave it up.
Yeah, I mean, I really think it comes down to the positioning of Slop as well. I mean, that was just so important for him to be there and not in the standard position that Strix was in because he had a perfect sight line from their spawn he has perfect sight line from them trying to make their way into Barn. He just had a straight shot and he was able to pick off so many different targets because of that. They tried to be as aggressive on the side of mixalazeub to see if they could force anything, but it didn't work out for him because they were just end up losing the trades. It was just too much. I mean, Zen was putting on a lot of pressure on them on the sides as well through that barn, making sure that he was there, they could keep an eye on him. And at the same time, Slop was just free firing. That's exactly what you would expect. We have made it to his ultimate though, so maybe we'll see him try and dive a little bit harder onto the Strix. He might try and wait a little bit longer.
Yeah, 3 ultimates available for Celestial with 2 truly right around the corner. Whereas you just saw Mix drop the Corvus ultimate a moment ago. Slop has gotten yet another opening pick. Princess Pekka ends up dropping down as well on this Ashe, and suddenly 2 for Celestial as they continue to surge forward. Make it 3 as Slop able to find another kill, this time onto the Victor. Celestial still have a good ways to go. This is Ice Mines after all. Even with a good fight, there's still a lot of work to do in a final, very difficult choke point trying to make it through. It's just barely the Talus able to make it right back out of there. But there's the Commander's grab landing. That brings the Ashe back, and yet again another pick coming out. Now they'll use the true power to make it into the backline, but Slop able to answer it. Devosi ends up losing again. Maybe Celestial can find this conversion after all.
That's absolutely huge for him to be brought that low and then not get the pick either. This is what I was talking about. Every time Princess Pekka tries to maintain control over that high ground, every time she tries to do pretty much anything, Atlas and Khan have the answer. What happened? They were trying to round that corner, around the hill, see if they could try and roll the card in. Ashe tried to shoulder bash her way out. Khan grabbed her. Or if it wasn't that, you got rewind. Every time that this Ashe is taken out of the fight, it becomes that much harder for mixalazeub to even try any ground, to try and gain any ground, because Chalice is 0-5. Davizy having a bit of a rough game as well. It makes it that much harder for them to try and create any space, especially when your frontliner gets countered by 2 of their frontliners.
It's a difficult job, and I think they really might be putting a little bit too much on Princess Pekka's plate with some of these drafts. I mean, how often have we seen whichever pick they're trying to pilot, essentially as the solo tank, get burned a little bit too quickly? It's made the task difficult, as quite a few ultimates will be coming into this mid-fight. The Barrage and the Assert Dominance available there for Mix, whereas 3 on the table for Celestial, but it's Closar that starts this fight off early, taking care of the victor on the other side very, very quickly, recognizing exactly where Princess Pekka is, who made it towards Barn and shut down Otev for a very important return kill, and perhaps maybe in a second as they found one more member low, but a good shield there from the Khan keeps them standing.
That's the best shielding that you could possibly ask for, because it gains them control over Barn now. Now they want to just chill out for the most part and see what they can do by Barn, and it's triple through time and space. Are you kidding me? Xenos hits 3 of them and leaves them in the dirt. That's a quadra kill as well. Celestial, my goodness, line them up and just knock them down.
All right, it's been a long set. I think Celestial and the boys might be done with this one at this point, right? They're starting to lock it up. That is their 3rd point unanswered here on Ice Mines, as apparently Xenos able to look deep within himself and find a nasty ultimate to turn this game around. A nice answer back from this Victor that is going to slow down some of this push on the backside of that mid take. Actually a double now for Princess, who I believe is in for knock here in this spot. I imagine that's who normally would be playing the Victor here for Mixed, but still, Celestial have got to be riding high off that point.
They have to be. I mean, Salazar are at least able to try and regain their control. They want to try and push Celestial back as far as they can, but even still, they're not really forcing much ground away from them. They even hit the rewind. They seem like they want to put their foot on the gas pedal for this fight, but a huge Corvus ultimate might make that hard for them.
I'd make it hard, but Closar ends up dropping yet again, and I don't see Princess Pekka slowing down anytime soon. Stepping forward again, has been hit by that Atlas and Slop, able to find the kill. That might open up for Celestial to finally get back onto offense. Otev gets the kill onto the Corvus as well, though it costs him his life. But Tutsik's making all those trades worth it. A 3-for-1 in favor of Celestial does get them back towards the payload. In fact, a double for Tutu as they continue to roll along and get this payload a little further down the hill.
Ooh, yeah, they find another pick as well. I mean, that's pretty huge, because now Talus is staggered out. They're a man down during this fight, and they have Exile Love. Ashe has the Assert Dominance, sure, but what have I been saying the whole time? She's just going to end up getting countered out by Connor Atlas. They're probably going to save some of their abilities even for that, and Otev actually even finds an opening pick for him.
Now that's pretty big that Otev was able to get that kill. Uber's Payday will have to sit down for yet another moment. It's still Celestial roll even further forward. Princess Pekka locked down on the right side, has to use the Shoulder Bash to reposition, and Xenos and Tutu down is pretty big for Celestial, but they still have Slop, who's hanging out in the back, finding a double, taking care of the Corvus and the Cassie, but eventually getting answered back by the Victor. So Celestial gonna need to find yet another regroup before they can push. Only 30 seconds left to find this conversion.
They haven't forced them back much at all on the side of mixalazeub, which means that it's going to be a lot harder for them to defend, especially when they haven't really forced them back as far as they may have liked to. They got those picks, but Slop trading out a couple of those meant that they could hold their ground. They didn't really have to back up. A huge rewind as well with possible Assert Dominance, and it is.
That's huge, though. Able to take care of Closar very early in this battle. Xenos still has his ultimate, but no way he finds a way to replicate that earlier magic. Princess Pekka gets another kill in the Tutu, and now that we're into overtime, things starting to look a little bit bleak for Celestial to find this conversion. Otev ends up dropping another kill there for Xenos, but this is largely on the retreat for Celestial. A big defense for Mix as they're able to hold on and maybe make it into another win.
Yeah, I mean, they use the Assert Dominance just to make sure they could capitalize on the tail end of that fight, which means that they just wanted to lock it down so that way they couldn't actually force anything past that. But that means they don't have it coming into this next round, which is going to be huge, especially if you need to force something onto them, which they can't really do. Sure, they have the barrage, but that's pretty much the only thing. They're just going to try and move out of the way. But, I mean, maybe Victor will group up with them, try and see if he can fight with them next to Barn. That's a good choke point. We know that they're going to try and contest there. Let's see if we can just spread out the damage and group them up as much as possible so we can cement a point capture for us.
Well, last time, Klosar aggressively went to the front of Barn, put down a wall, and was able to help his team regain control. Some shots from Xenos being used here to try and find some dismounts, as already Mix have made their way up towards the high ground of the opposite side. But Tutu stepping forward, recognizing a chance to put some decent damage into the Talus, will finally start to fall back a bit, as it looks like Celestial have some control, even able to get the kill onto Princess Hympia on this Victor. Devosi, though, gets the return kill onto Toot Toot, which was needed, but Slop continues to come out on top in his little skirmishes to make it a pretty even trade. It's checkerboarding throughout the kill feed.
Yeah, they are able to at least get Slob towards the tail end of that, but an overpower that gets killed while he's overpowering his target, he gets killed. That ultimate percentage is going to come back to him, but that means that he doesn't have it for this potential next recapture. Same thing for the Ash, and actually, he doesn't have any percentage of it at all. 5% available for Khan. I thought he had been killed on the way to the ultimate, not while he was already holding him. With that being the case, that means that he has no overpower whatsoever, but they still have an exile. They might try and fight off of the back of an exile, or maybe trying to force him in space again, but it goes far.
Not quite able to find that kill, but it looks like it doesn't matter. Slop gets the first and Otep gets the second. Overtime is ticking, but Celestial have made their way in. They are able to find the touch, and they're able to get a couple more kills. Slop gets one into Devosi, and Princess Pekka drops to Xenost, and I don't know that Mix are going to be able to find another touch at this point. There's too many members stepping forward. They'll get the dismounts, and that should be it for Celestial. A hard-fought battle, a 5-map set, but Celestial are the team that comes out on top.
Yeah, I mean, very well done by them. I mean, we're even talking about that insane through time and space that Xenos was able to
That's
hit a
right.
triple through time and space, pretty much cemented them that lead that they would have wanted to take hold of. And because of that, they were able to hold their ground, fight back, roll the cart right on in, and it made it just that much harder for Mixalazeub to even try and fight back on their side. I mean, you tried to play it slow, but even still, that went pretty quickly.
It did. I mean, what, a 4-1 ends up
Yeah.
going in favor of Celestial there. I mean, Ice Mines usually you should be good for, you'd think, at least 2 defenses in that spot, but didn't quite come to fruition for Mix this time. And I wonder if maybe the single tank was kind of the problem. Therefore, the solo tank was struggling a little bit. I don't think Princess Pekka played poorly by any means, just that they continually asked a lot of that player, and maybe that was too much. What did you see as sort of the core issue here, Fawn?
Um, I think the core issue in its own right was the fact that Ash was their only tank against two for counters. I mean, I know I had mentioned it multiple times beforehand, and I might sound like a broken record at this point, but I feel like that was so important because every time they didn't have their frontliner there, they couldn't move. There was too much damage. The Luminary played too strong. Atlas was even chunking some of them because of those damage changes, and that made it so much harder for them to even try and stall on the side of Mixalazub. Whenever Ash was out of the picture or wasn't creating enough space, they had to forfeit a lot of that percentage or that cart positioning just for them to make sure that they could actually fight the next go around.
It was difficult. It felt like it was a bit of an uphill battle
Mhm.
for Mix throughout a lot of those last couple of maps, despite the fact that they started out in actually a pretty confident position, I would say. I mean, remember they opened up with that initial 4-0, and then it was responded back by Celestial right afterwards. So Mix clearly, I think, struggling a little bit throughout the middle of that set. But that should do it for us here in Europe. Remember, we do have Brazil coming up here very next set. So if I were you all and you were looking for some more Paladins action, I wouldn't be thinking about going anywhere here at this point. Instead, I would be getting ready for this very next match. We'll be right back with some Brazil in just a few minutes.